Mrs. Patterson, your mother's will states that you physically abused her and are hereby disinherited. The attorney's words hung in the air like smoke. I sat frozen in the leather chair, my hands gripping the armrests. The office smelled like coffee and old books. Outside the window, traffic moved normally on Fifth Street, people going about their lives while mine was being dismantled. Across the mahogany table, my stepdaughter Rachel folded her hands and looked down, the picture of sorrowful dignity. My son Marcus sat next to her, his face carefully blank. When had they started sitting together like that? Like allies, like co-conspirators? "I'm sorry." "What?" I managed to say. Attorney Gerald Thompson adjusted his glasses. He was a thin man in his 60s, with the kind of face that had seen too many family wars. His desk held photos of grandchildren, a coffee mug that said "World's Best Dad," stacks of legal files in manila folders. Everything normal, everything ordinary, except for the bomb he'd just dropped. "According to the will executed 6 weeks ago, your mother, Helen Chen, explicitly disinherited you due to a pattern of physical abuse documented over the last 6 months of her life." I stood up so fast, my chair tipped backward and hit the wall. The sound was loud in the quiet office. "That's a lie. I never touched my mother." Thompson slid a manila folder across the table. His hands were steady, mine were not. "I'm required to share the supporting documentation with all parties." My hands shook as I opened it. Hospital reports on official letterhead, police statements with case numbers, photographs of bruises on my mother's arms, her back, her face. Each report was dated from January through June. Each one named me as the abuser, Catherine Patterson. My name, over and over, like an accusation written in ink. "This is fake," I said. "All of it." "Catherine," Rachel's voice was soft, sympathetic, perfectly modulated. "I know this is hard to hear, but your mother told me everything. She was terrified of you. She begged me not to leave her alone with you." I looked at her. Rachel was 32, my late husband's daughter from his first marriage. We'd never been close. After my husband died 5 years ago, she'd drifted away completely. Then 6 months ago, she'd suddenly reappeared, full of concern, wanting to help care for my mother, who'd been diagnosed with dementia. I'd been grateful. God help me. I'd been grateful for her help. "My mother had Alzheimer's," I said, my voice shaking. She didn't know what day it was, half the time. She called me Susan. Susan was her sister, who died in 1987. She thought Reagan was still president. Thompson looked uncomfortable. He shifted papers on his desk. "Mrs. Patterson, there are multiple witnesses who corroborated these allegations. Rachel Patterson, Marcus Patterson, several staff members at Evergreen Memory Care." I looked at Marcus, my son, the boy I'd raised alone after his father died of a heart attack when Marcus was 27 years old now, working in IT. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Marcus, you told them I abused Grandma?" He shifted in his seat. "Mom, I saw the bruises Rachel showed me. She fell constantly. The dementia made her unsteady. She'd forget where she was, try to get up too fast, lose her balance." "That's what abusers always say," Rachel said quietly, and something in her tone made my skin crawl. I pulled out my phone with trembling hands. "I'm calling Dr. Morrison. He was Mom's physician. He never filed any abuse reports." Thompson raised a hand. "I've already spoken with Dr. Morrison. He confirmed he filed 3 separate reports with Adult Protective Services." "That's not possible." I dialed anyway. Dr. Morrison answered on the 3rd ring. "Catherine, did you file abuse reports about me?" Silence. Then Catherine, "I'm so sorry. I had no choice. The evidence was clear." "What evidence?" "She had dementia. She thought I was her dead sister." "I know this is painful, but denial won't help. I recommended counseling." I hung up. My hands shook so hard I nearly dropped the phone. Thompson continued. "The entirety of Helen Chen's estate, valued at approximately $847,000, including the house on Riverside Drive, her savings and investment accounts, is to be divided equally between Rachel Patterson and Marcus Patterson." Rachel and Marcus, not me, my mother's only biological child, who'd visited her every single day at the memory care facility, who'd held her hand when she died 2 weeks ago. "I want to contest this," I said. "That's your right," Thompson said. But the documentation is extensive, and there's a video. My blood turned to ice. A video? He pulled out a tablet. On the screen, my mother sat in her room at Evergreen. The timestamp said, April 18th. A woman I didn't recognize sat across from her. Mrs. Chen, can you tell me about your daughter Catherine? My mother's face crumpled. She hurts me. She gets so angry. I try to be good, but I forget things. And then she pushes me. She grabs my arms. I'm scared of her. I couldn't breathe. That's not real. But it looked real. It sounded real. The interviewer is from Adult Protective Services, Thompson said. This was part of their investigation. What investigation? No one ever contacted me. According to APS records, you refused to cooperate. Because no one ever tried to interview me. Rachel sighed. Catherine, please. This is hard for all of us. I turned to her, really looked at her. She was calm. Too calm. There was something cold and calculating beneath the mask of sympathy. You did this, I said. I don't know how, but you did this. I loved Helen, Rachel said. She was the closest thing I had to a real grandmother. Marcus put his hand on Rachel's shoulder. When had they gotten so close? I grabbed the folder and walked out. I sat in my car and went through every document. The hospital reports were from 3 different facilities. The police reports were filed with 2 different precincts. The photographs showed bruises in various stages of healing. But something was wrong. I pulled out my calendar app and cross-referenced the dates. January 15th, hospital report claiming I'd pushed my mother downstairs. I'd been in Phoenix for a work conference. February 3rd, police report, after I allegedly grabbed her arm. I'd been home with the flu. My neighbor Diane had brought me soup. March 22nd, hospital visit for a suspected broken wrist. I'd been at jury duty. Every incident had an alibi. Someone had fabricated this carefully. I called my mother's neighbor, Mrs. Kowalski, who'd lived next door for 30 years. Catherine, darling, I'm so sorry about your mother. Did you ever see me hurt her? What? No, of course not. Did Rachel visit often? Oh yes, constantly. Such a devoted girl. Though I did wonder about some of the bruises. Helen would come outside with marks on her arms. Rachel said Helen kept falling. My stomach turned. Did you ever see the falls? No. Rachel said they mostly happened at night. I hung up and called Evergreen Memory Care. The director, Susan Clark, pulled up my mother's file. I don't see any reports filed by our staff regarding abuse. There are incident reports for falls, medication issues, but nothing about family abuse. Were you aware APS interviewed my mother? No. That would be noted in her file. I spent the next hour making calls. The police precincts had no record of the case numbers. The hospitals had treated my mother for falls, but with no mention of suspected abuse in their actual records. The reports had been altered. Every document was fake or doctored. Rachel had access to my mother. She'd been the primary caregiver. She'd taken real medical visits and weaponized them, creating a false narrative, sophisticated enough to fool professionals. I drove to Marcus's apartment. My heart was pounding. It was after 7 in the evening. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and red. I parked in the visitor lot and sat there for 5 minutes, trying to figure out what I was going to say to my son. How do you confront someone you raised when you suspect they've betrayed you in the worst possible way? I climbed the stairs to his second-floor apartment. The building was one of those newer complexes with gray siding and black railings. I'd helped him move in 2 years ago. He answered after a moment. I'd interrupted dinner. He was in sweatpants and a t-shirt, looking tired. There was half-eaten pizza on the coffee table behind him. Mom, I don't think we should. How much is she paying you? He blinked. What? Rachel, how much is she giving you to help her steal my inheritance? His face shifted, surprise, then defensiveness, then something that looked like relief, like he'd been waiting for this. That's not what's happening. Then what is happening, Marcus? Because those documents are fake. Every single one. I've checked. The hospitals have no abuse reports. The police case numbers don't exist. Someone fabricated all of it. He shifted his weight, hands going into his pockets, a defensive posture I remembered from his teenage years. Rachel has evidence. Rachel has lies. She has photographs. I've seen the bruises on Grandma. Bruises Rachel probably caused, or caused by letting Grandma fall when no one else was around. Marcus, she moved in with a woman who had dementia, who couldn't defend herself, and spent 6 months building a case. She wouldn't do that. But his voice wavered. Why not? What do you know about her? You barely spoke to her before this year. Then suddenly, you're best friends. What changed? He was quiet. I could see him weighing something, deciding how much to tell me. Then, quietly, she promised me $100,000 if I backed up her story. The words hit me like a blow. I stepped backward, my hand reaching for the railing. She paid you. She's paying me. After the estate settles, he finally looked at me, guilt mixed with defiance and resentment. Mom, you don't need the money. You have your job, your house, retirement. I have $40,000 in student loans, credit card debt from when I was unemployed. Rachel said we could split it 3 ways. Everyone wins. Except I'm branded as an abuser. Except Grandma's memory is destroyed. Except everything I did for her is rewritten as violence. You still have your memories. That's when I knew. That's when I understood how completely Rachel had convinced him this was acceptable. Get out of my way. Mom, get out of my way, or I swear I will never speak to you again. Do you understand? I will walk out of your life, forever. Something in my voice convinced him. He stepped aside. I pushed past him into his apartment. Where is it? Where's what? But his eyes flickered toward his bedroom. The real evidence, whatever Rachel is using to keep you in line. She's smart. She wouldn't trust you without leverage. I started toward his bedroom. Marcus grabbed my arm, but I yanked away. Mom, stop. You can't search my apartment. Call the cops then. Let's see what they find. His bedroom was small, neat, a bed, a dresser, a desk with a laptop. I went straight for the laptop. It was open, unlocked. Mom, don't, please. But I was already clicking through his files. Then I opened his email and found the folder labeled Insurance. Everything was there. Screenshots of text messages between Marcus and Rachel dating back 9 months, November of last year, 3 months before Rachel had moved in with my mother. Rachel, your grandma's getting worse. We should start planning. Marcus, planning? What? Rachel, she's going to need full-time care soon. That's expensive. But if we position things right, we can make sure the estate doesn't get drained. The messages got more specific in December. Rachel researched elder law. In January, she found information about using dementia patients' testimony. In February, she hired the graphic designer. There were emails to someone named Kevin Frost, documentation enhancement. Kevin was a freelance designer who charged $3,000 to create the fake reports and statements. PayPal receipts, Venmo transfers, $2,000 to Lisa Chen for interview services. She posed as the APS investigator. Plans to contest my mother's will. Research on triggering suspicious behavior in dementia patients. A timeline for introducing evidence. They'd been planning this for almost a year. This wasn't opportunistic. This was premeditated. I forwarded everything to my email. Every screenshot, every receipt, every document. Marcus stood in the doorway watching, his face pale. Mom, I can explain. Don't. My voice was cold. Don't you dare. Rachel said. I don't care what Rachel said. You're 27. You're an adult. You chose money over me. You chose to help frame your own mother. You chose to let an innocent woman be destroyed for cash. You're not destroyed. You still have your life. Do I? My mother's doctor thinks I'm an abuser. The attorney thinks I'm an abuser. There's video of my mother saying she's terrified of me. Even after I prove this is fake, that shadow will follow me forever. He had nothing to say. I pulled out my phone and called Attorney Thompson. It was after hours, but I had his emergency number. He answered on the 4th ring, sounding irritated. Mr. Thompson, this is Catherine Patterson. I need you to freeze the estate proceedings immediately. I have evidence of fraud. Mrs. Patterson, I understand you're upset, but it's 8 o'clock at night. I have emails, text messages, payment records. Rachel and Marcus conspired to fabricate abuse allegations to steal my mother's estate. They hired a graphic designer to create fake documents. They paid someone to pose as an adult protective services investigator. They planned this for 9 months. I'm sending you everything right now. I heard him shift, could picture him sitting up, his attorney brain engaging. If this is true, this is a criminal matter. I know. I'm going to the police next, but I need you to stop any transfers or distributions of my mother's assets until this is resolved. Can you do that? I'll need to review what you're sending. If it's legitimate, I'll file an emergency motion first thing tomorrow morning to halt probate pending investigation. I started emailing him the files right there, my fingers moving fast over the phone screen. Check your email. It's coming through now. I heard him typing on his end. A pause, then quietly, my God. Will you file the motion? I'll have it filed by 9 a.m. Mrs. Patterson, I'm very sorry. I should have been more thorough. You trusted the documentation. That's what Rachel counted on. I hung up and called the non-emergency police line, explained the situation. They transferred me to the detective division. A detective named Sarah Mills took my call, her voice crisp and professional, even at this hour. Ma'am, what you're describing is fraud, forgery, and potentially elder abuse. I need you to come to the station and file a formal complaint. Can you do that tonight? I'll be there in 20 minutes. I looked at Marcus one last time. He was still standing in the doorway, frozen, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. You need to decide right now, I said. Are you going to keep protecting Rachel, or are you going to cooperate with the police investigation? Because they're going to find everything I just found. It's all in the cloud, backed up, impossible to delete. So you have one chance to do the right thing. I didn't think, his voice cracked. I didn't think it would go this far. You thought you could frame your own mother and steal her inheritance. And what? Everyone would just accept it? There'd be no consequences? Rachel said you'd be fine. She said you'd just move on, that you didn't even really care about Grandma, that you were just going through the motions. That hurt, worse than anything else he'd said. Worse than the confession about the money. Worse than finding the evidence of their conspiracy. The idea that my son believed I didn't care about my own mother, that he'd let someone else tell him who I was. Get a lawyer, I said. A real one, because you're going to need one. I walked out of his apartment and didn't look back. The police station was bright with fluorescent lights. Detective Sarah Mills met me in the lobby, a woman in her 40s with short dark hair and tired eyes. Mrs. Patterson, come with me. She led me to an interview room. Another detective, Rodriguez, joined us with a laptop. This conversation will be recorded, Mills said. Is that acceptable? Yes. I told them everything. The will reading, the fake documents, my alibis, the evidence on Marcus's laptop. I showed them the forwarded emails, screenshots, payment receipts. Mills and Rodriguez went through each one carefully. This is detailed, Mills said. Whoever planned this knew what they were doing. My stepdaughter, Rachel Patterson. She's a paralegal. And your son participated? For money, $100,000. Mills leaned back. What you've brought us is enough to open a criminal investigation. Fraud, forgery, conspiracy, possibly elder abuse. But building a case will take time. How long? Weeks, maybe months. I spent 3 hours there that night, going through everything again, signing statements, providing documentation. The next 2 weeks were lawyers and investigators and paperwork. Attorney Thompson filed an emergency motion to halt probate. The judge granted it. Rachel and Marcus were served with notices that they were under criminal investigation. The case made local news. I stopped reading the comments online. Detective Mills called in late September. We verified the forgeries. The graphic designer cooperated. We tracked down the woman who posed as the APS investigator. She's willing to testify. Adult Protective Services has no record of ever investigating your mother's case. Can you arrest them now? We're meeting with the district attorney tomorrow. Rachel was arrested the following week. I saw the footage on the news. She looked calm as they led her out in handcuffs. Her attorney told reporters this was a misunderstanding. Marcus turned himself in the same day. He called me from the station, crying. Mom, please. I didn't know it would get this bad. Please, you have to believe me. I want to believe you, Marcus. Then do, please. I'm your son. I love you. But love wasn't enough. Trust was the foundation, and it was shattered. I can't help you, I said, and hung up. The case took 9 months to work through the courts, 9 months of depositions and motions and continuances, 9 months of my face appearing in local news stories, 9 months of people at work avoiding eye contact or asking invasive questions masked as concern. The evidence was overwhelming. Kevin Frost, the graphic designer, testified in exchange for immunity. He showed the court the original files Rachel had sent him, the instructions for altering medical records, the payments. Lisa Chen, the woman who'd posed as the APS investigator, testified that Rachel had hired her through a freelance website, paying her $2,000 for 3 hours of work. She'd been told it was for a documentary project. Detective Mills testified about the investigation, about how none of the police reports existed in official systems, how the case numbers were fabricated, how Adult Protective Services had no record of ever investigating my mother's case. Attorney Thompson testified about how convincing the documentation had been, how it had fooled his professional scrutiny. Dr. Morrison testified too, looking ashamed, explaining how he'd believed the reports were real because they'd been presented so professionally, with medical terminology and proper formatting. Rachel sat through all of it with her expensive attorney, her face calm and composed. She wore conservative suits and kept her expression neutral, the picture of wrongly accused innocence. Her attorney tried every angle. He argued she genuinely believed I was abusing my mother. He argued that some of the medical records were real, that my mother really had been injured, that Rachel had only filled in the gaps. He argued that Marcus was the real mastermind and Rachel was just following his lead. None of it worked. The prosecution had the paper trail, the emails, the payments, the timeline that showed Rachel had started planning this before she'd even moved in with my mother. They had her research history, searches for contesting wills and elder abuse documentation, and dementia patient testimony admissible. Rachel pled guilty in March. The trial would have destroyed her, and her attorney knew it. She pled to fraud, forgery, conspiracy, elder abuse, and theft by deception. I wasn't at the sentencing hearing, but my victim impact statement was read into the record. I'd written it at my kitchen table one Saturday morning, crying through most of it. Rachel Patterson didn't just steal my inheritance. I'd written, she stole my mother's final months. She turned a woman with dementia into a weapon. She made my mother believe, in her confusion and fear, that her own daughter was hurting her. She documented that fear, recorded it, used it. She destroyed my reputation, my relationship with my son, and my faith in family. The financial cost can be calculated. The emotional cost never can. The prosecutor recommended 5 years. Rachel got 3, with credit for time served while awaiting trial. The judge's words stayed with me. You exploited a vulnerable woman with dementia. You turned her final months into evidence for a theft scheme. You caused immeasurable harm, not just to Mrs. Patterson, but to your victim, Helen Chen, who spent her last days frightened and confused, believing lies you fed her. This was calculated, premeditated, and profoundly cruel. This court shows no leniency for those who abuse the elderly, no matter how sophisticated their schemes. Marcus pled guilty separately. His attorney negotiated a deal, testimony against Rachel in exchange for a reduced sentence. He got 18 months in prison, suspended to 2 years probation and 500 hours of community service. The judge was more lenient because he'd cooperated, because he'd shown what looked like remorse, because his attorney painted him as a victim of Rachel's manipulation. I didn't attend his sentencing either. I couldn't watch him apologize and cry and promise to do better. I couldn't watch him try to minimize his role, to make himself the secondary player in a crime he'd enthusiastically participated in. The will was thrown out. My mother's previous will, the legitimate one executed 3 years earlier, was reinstated. I inherited the house on Riverside Drive, the savings accounts, the investment portfolio, everything my mother had worked for, saved for, protected. The first thing I did was sell the house. I couldn't live there, couldn't walk through rooms where Rachel had lived with my mother, manipulating her, hurting her, creating the false reality that would become evidence. I sold it within a month for slightly below market value because I needed it gone. Half the proceeds went to the Alzheimer's Association, specifically to their programs for caregiver support and elder abuse prevention. I wanted something good to come from this nightmare. Wanted other families to have resources we didn't have, wanted caregivers to be trained to spot the signs of financial exploitation. The other half went into an irrevocable trust for my mother's great-grandchildren, if Marcus ever has any. If he does, the money will be there for their education. Released when they turn 18. They'll never know where it came from, or why. I hope Marcus has learned something. I hope he's become a better person. I hope his children, if he has them, never know what he did. But I won't be around to find out. Marcus and I don't speak anymore. He sent letters, long apologies explaining how Rachel manipulated him, how the promise of money blinded him, how he regrets everything. His probation officer says he's doing well, volunteering at a senior center as part of his community service. There's an irony in that I can't quite process, but I don't respond to the letters. I don't call. I don't forgive. Because manipulation only works if you let it. He chose to believe Rachel over me. He chose to help frame his own mother. He chose money over family, over truth, over basic human decency. Those were his choices, and choices have consequences. I still work at the same company, still live in my same house. My colleagues know what happened. Some are sympathetic, others are distant, as if trauma is contagious. I've learned to tell the difference between genuine concern and morbid curiosity pretty quickly now. But I'm different, harder, more careful. I don't trust easily anymore. I don't assume that family means loyalty, or that blood is thicker than water, or any of the other comforting lies we tell ourselves about kinship. Because I learned the truth. The people who know you best are the ones who can hurt you most effectively. They know your vulnerabilities, your patterns, the exact places to strike for maximum damage. And if they're smart, like Rachel was, they'll plan everything carefully, methodically, building their case piece by piece until the lie becomes indistinguishable from truth. The only thing that saved me was evidence. Hard, verifiable data, timestamps and receipts and phone logs that couldn't be altered or explained away. Without those digital breadcrumbs, I would have lost everything. Dr. Morrison apologized profusely when the truth came out. He'd been completely fooled by the fake reports, by Rachel's convincing performance as a concerned stepdaughter. Attorney Thompson apologized too. He'd done his due diligence, he said, but the forgeries were sophisticated enough to pass professional scrutiny. Everyone was sorry, but sorry doesn't give me back the final months with my mother. Sorry doesn't erase the video of her crying, terrified of a daughter who never hurt her. Sorry doesn't rebuild trust that's been destroyed. It doesn't restore relationships that have been poisoned beyond recovery. I visit my mother's grave every Sunday morning before the crowds arrive. The cemetery is peaceful then, quiet, except for birdsong and the distant sound of traffic. I bring fresh flowers, usually roses, which were her favorite. I sit on the bench beside her headstone and tell her about my week, about work, about the weather, about everything except Marcus and Rachel and the conspiracy that defined her final days. The headstone reads, Helen Chen, beloved mother. Below that I had them engrave a line from her favorite poem by Emily Dickinson, Truth is such a rare thing, it is delightful to tell it. The truth did come out, but the cost was devastating. If someone close to you ever starts building a narrative that doesn't match your reality, don't dismiss it as a misunderstanding. If documentation appears that contradicts your own memory, verify every single detail. If family members suddenly align against you, ask yourself who benefits from your destruction. Follow the money, check the timelines, save your receipts. Trust your instincts, keep your own records. Document your life meticulously, because someone else might try to rewrite it for their own profit. And remember, the people who are supposed to love you should never ask you to question your own reality. That's not love, that's manipulation. And manipulation wrapped in the language of care and concern is one of the cruelest weapons in the world. My mother deserved better than to have her final months turned into ammunition. I deserved better than to be painted as a monster by my own child. And if you're reading this and something feels wrong in your family dynamic, trust that feeling, investigate it, protect yourself, document everything. Because the truth will surface eventually, but only if you fight for it with everything you have.